Good morning, controls fans. Welcome to your pre-con technology track. I'm Nicole Conklin, Director of Products at Cochran Supply, and I'll be your host today. So our goal here is to make the uncomfortable feel comfortable. Whether it's networking, diving into tips and tricks, learning about cybersecurity or cloud applications. So put yourself out there, connect, ask the questions. This is why we're here this week. Today you have a room full of suppliers here to show you how to get more out of their tools. From new features and hidden gems to real-world tips to save you time and effort. During our presentations, please hold your questions. You'll have time after the sessions, at lunch, after the track, and even the next couple of days at the booths. Thank you again for joining us today. Let's get started. First, we have Emily Weisensale with Tritium here to show you how to design for impact and create a better UI.
Very excited to be here today to throw out the first pitch at this great baseball-themed event today. And want to get started by kind of taking a step back and going through some design principles to help you apply to your experiences that you're creating. Because raise your hand in here if you use the PX editor or any equivalent editor that creates graphical pages. Wonderful. I expected most of y'all to say, raise your hand. How many of you, when somebody asks you, what do you do in your job, do you say that you are a user experience designer? Because you are. You are, yes, I saw you in the back, thank you. You are designing what your customers will ultimately use. And so in this session, I'm gonna tell you about some 6 basic design principles that you can apply to those pages and really kind of wow and really make things better. So to get started, what we're gonna learn about are understanding the design principles. So go into 6. There are tons of design principles out there. I have handpicked 6 that I think will very much help you that you could start applying when you walk out of this conference in 2 days, but not yet because you need to pay attention. And then I'm gonna show you exactly how to apply them in Niagara using potentially a very wonderful web-based UX builder, which is the Niagara 415 web version of the PX editor. And ultimately from that, you're going to delight your users because you will be able to step up those presentation graphics that you're creating. So what are we gonna cover? We're gonna cover the importance of visual design, learn about why companies invest in that, what impact it can have, those 6 core principles, and then a little show and tell of how you can apply them. So this is one of my favorite, a great quote from Don Norman, and so often do you really think, oh man, that was the best experience that was designed so easily. No, but what you do think is, that was way too hard. I shouldn't have had to click so many times. Why can't I find what I'm looking for? And so you can see here that good design is actually harder to notice because you don't notice it. It's invisible, which is the best word in there. And bad design stands out like a sore thumb because you are not able to accomplish what you're looking to do in the right amount of time that you thought you'd justified for. Also, just, money is everything, and how do you sell the good design? Because it takes time to be able to build that. But for breastcancer.org, they reduced their monthly help desk by 70% almost, because they redesigned and allowed their users to be able to accomplish their goals without having to call the support desk. For Oracle, look at this one. When they redesigned the navigation structure, they perform their tasks 20% faster. Now that one I think really resonates around here, because imagine if your building owners, facility managers could be able to accomplish what they're looking for, diagnose and do things with a quicker speed, more gets done. That is an easy sale, I think, for anybody here in this room to be able to talk to about their building owners. So with these design principles applied, you can see how that this will be able to help your customers. And ultimately, what does that do? It's going to be that navigation and usability. So like we said, you never really notice when you can buy things very, like look at Amazon. I can put it in my cart, I can shop out really fast. If it wasn't that simple, I would probably complain and not know that. So improving that usability and navigation saves the time, and it also makes a happier customer. Communication. So complex data, I think that's a great thing that resonates here as well. How do you be able to take that complex data and make it very clear to someone who may not know all of the underpinnings of how that really works, but they know that they need to find what is going wrong. And so that's where your design can really point out what is the, where should you focus and things like that. And then ultimately making better decisions. Because when you're able to find the information quickly and usefully, you can ultimately make that better decision in your business day to day. So what are my core principles? And again, these are not the only 6 out there, but these are the 6 that I'm going to focus on today, just because I think these are ones that you can easily apply right away, which are hierarchy, consistency, contrast, accessibility, proximity, and alignment. And there's quite a few out there. These in combination, I think, and when I show you the start and the end of how I take a dashboard and apply these principles, you'll be able to see what magic it makes. So what do I mean by hierarchy? Did you read that first? This is about 90% people do, but this is showing you that in hierarchy, it's going to show you how you structure what shows up on the page. You want to make sure that you're focusing the user's attention to that most important object where they're going to get that information. It really involves, the elements involved in there are going to be your font size, your weight, your colors, your spacing, and how you're organizing your information. And so this is a great test of which order did you read this. Hopefully you will read this first because it was giant and red right there on the screen, catching your attention with that hierarchy. Consistency. This one's always fun, and my friend Danielle in the back, she's one of my PowerPoint reviewers, and we do not like it when there's 5 different fonts that are used across the entire PowerPoint. The little things like that will distract users. You've got people who really pick up on those minute details, and that's going to take their attention away from what they should actually be focusing on in that experience. So to remove that obstacle, you want to make sure you have the consistent styling. You want to make sure that you're using that same type of navigation and layout that you're using so it's consistent across the experience, and I don't have to rethink how to move across the page because it's all very much laid out in the same patterns. Naming conventions, icons, anything like this, coloring buttons. You want to make sure that your buttons show you, is this a primary, a secondary, or like, you want to make sure that it kind of implies what's going to happen when the user clicks that button. Is it a pop-up, or is it going to be something that navigates them to another page? By having consistent but yet different treatments on those, it can really help you to create that navigational just feel that the user starts to get used to. Contrast. This is always a hard one for us because contrast is definitely something that falls into the accessibility range as well, but it's not just color, which is what we think of when we think of contrast most of the time. You also want to think about shapes, size, patterns. Using that contrast with the hierarchy really helps to identify, make things pop. Lets you leverage the size, the shapes, color, texture, all of these things will help the users to be able to really, you look at this and you want to draw their attention to what is most important on the screen, as we all know, especially when we have a lot of data or information that could very well be happening on that page. You want to draw them to the right spots at the right time. Accessibility. I bet a lot of you get asked for either VPATs or accessibility, WCAG, all of the fun stuff. I know it's coming up even more in the EU than it is as it's migrating over to the US. And this is very important to be able to do with our friends who are potentially colorblind. And by the way, colorblind's not just black and white. There's a whole spectrum of colorblindness and different accessibility traits that you want to think about. And so you can see at the very top here, the green on green or the orange on red is not going to be very accessible for anybody who is green or red colorblind. So you want to make sure that you have the right contrast, which there are tools out there that you can use on your pages to be able to tell you if your contrast ratios are good for the accessibility standards. Lots of great content out there. If you go to the W3C standards and look at that, they've got wonderful screen reading tools that can help you to be able to see how close you are to hitting those numbers or where you might have some adjustments to make. And then proximity. You want to group things together that are like, if I'm looking at this part of the page, the information, let's say it's about a building, that information should all be together. It probably shouldn't be over there on this side. which so that you can have all of the things related together, which I think we all understand, because when you're looking at your websites, you want to be able to see all those like stuff so that when I'm focused in this one area, I get all of the information that I need. And I know I'm probably not saying anything that's revolutionary, but if you slow down, take a step back, and you apply all of these 6 principles together, you'll be able to see the impact that it's going to make on your user's experience. And alignment. This is my favorite one because I love things to be very prettily and aligned and perfect. And it can really throw somebody off when things are not quite aligned or easy to see. So the grid pattern is a great way to start. You'll see here at the top, it created into this 4-column grid. You want to create a consistent grid that you're using, and that goes with your consistency layout. You see I'm using a lot of the same words across each of these 6 principles because they very much all relate together. That is the start of this with my 6 principles, but let's be honest, we're all here to see how it works in our industry. And so, look at my wonderful dashboard I have created. And so I'm just gonna point out, let's see if this will work. Haha, it does. Some of the things I might have gone overboard on my bad example, but I'm gonna point out how applying principles will take this to that. And the greatest part is all of this is using Niagara, no add-ons or anything like that. So I'm gonna go through each of these 6 principles with you and step back to take this into the other one. And so just to point out some of them, you can see I've got contrast, my grouping, I've got about 4 different fonts going on in here. So I really did go a bit overboard on each of them, but let you see all of the different ways that we can apply this. See some laughter out here because I know it is a bit extreme on this side. So, starting off, hierarchy. I love my webpage to greet me. It's very lovely, but hello, Emily is not important on this page. And so you can see by just taking that down and giving more focus into the building here, see, that's gonna help me see that's probably more information than my lovely website greeting me every day that I see it every morning. So very simple, but by applying the hierarchy to take your attention, it really made a big difference. Next up, we have, make sure I get it right, consistency. So my buttons are not right. My widgets are not in the same order, and it is not very easy to navigate all of this on the first example. So by grouping them together, creating consistent buttons, which all of these are links, so you can see the button treatments are the same. Everything also has a label, which you can see on the first one doesn't always have a label, so that's gonna allow people to know what it is if they don't have that kind of information, that background with them. So if I'm a new user coming in, I'm gonna need a bit more detail to be able to know what I'm looking at. And not only am I gonna show you some of this, but I'll give you some tricks on how to even manage that inside of Niagara. So first off, look at that. I'm in the browser. You're gonna see this in my video that I've done here because I pre-recorded it, but always excited to see because, always a good plug here, with Niagara 415 and Niagara Remote, I can build graphics from not being on site. I can be able to build them wherever I choose to, which is very, very more convenient than having to sit on a site that's not my home base to be able to build all of these graphics. So always want to call that out. However, we're here to talk about consistency, and what tools does Niagara have to help you? Those are PX properties. If you don't use PX properties, you should, because I can go ahead and align up my H1, H2, that's my heading 1, heading 2, and be able to set up what are these fonts that I'm going to apply across the board, so that I can then link those as I'm creating each of these widgets, and I can be able to keep these consistent throughout the entire page. So as you see here, I'm setting up my headers that I'm gonna go ahead and put into my PX properties, and then I'll come in and I'll link them into the font. And so if you didn't know about this, you right click, link, and then you're gonna mix that, bind it to the PX property right here. So coming in here to the other example, you can see you can also do colors, fonts, really get that stacked up so that you have a consistent view or a consistent use of those fonts, colors, and sizing and everything across the board. And next up, we have contrast. So as you, oops, going backwards, don't do that one. Sorry, my clicker's very excited. No, too far. Wrong way. Excuse me. We're back. Okay, so now we're at contrast, which you can see here that the escalated alarm console, if I was potentially colorblind red, I would not even know that there were words on there, potentially. And so by mixing it, moving it over to this dark on top of a light red, it still gives the importance that I have to alerts. I need to go look at this, but it is not going to, it'll be easier to read. And there's a button actually at the end of that that will look consistent to the view details and other buttons that are on the page. And accessibility. So accessibility is not just about color, because on the left side, I would not know that yellow is actually not good. So you want to make sure you have both labels and colors that are in contrast when you're using color, because with accessibility standards, color cannot denote a status without having a secondary way of knowing what that status is. So anytime you're using color as a status, you want to make sure that you've got a label or some way that you're also denoting what that status is. And now, coming into the last, I think it's the last one, proximity. So you'll see how I am grouping in, from the left to the right. You can see how I have grouped all of the information that is very nice, but kind of more standard over to the left, and then each of the buildings became consistent. And doing that using these wonderful shading boxes, which, how did I get drop shadowed shading boxes in my PX editor is a great question. Let's take a look. I'm going to actually load an SVG picture that has a box with a shadow around it, and I will be able to load it as a SVG, here it comes, and make the scale going to be the fit. And you'll see here that once I do that, push it to the back, I'm gonna be able to use that as a drop shadow, which these little boxes make such a big difference to make things pop as I'm grouping my elements together. And so that is how today we can get these very fancy looking drop shadowed boxes inside of Niagara. Continuing into Niagara 5, we're gonna continue to make this easier, but I wanted to give you this little tip on how you could do that right now when you leave the building, if you want to. And then last but not least, we have alignment and distribution. And so if you aren't using these lovely features of the right click, which multi-select, using control, right click, align, and distribute are your best friends. This is going to allow the computer to align each of these pixels so that you don't have to sit there with your control and shift and click and all of that fun stuff to make things line up exactly right. So how many people use the right click, align, and distribute today? Oh, good. How many are going to tomorrow? Everybody, wonderful, thank you. So these are just some little tips and tricks that I've used working with our UX designer to be able to apply these principles and really make the graphics pop. And here we go, that's where it ended. So for final thoughts here for you, when you're applying these, what are you gonna do? You're gonna define what is it that I'm trying to do on this page. So the first thing is you gotta step back and say, what is the important information that I need to portray here? And because that's gonna be your most important stuff that's gonna line up your hierarchy. Strive for consistency, so get those PX properties loaded up and then go ahead and use your H1, H2, and you wanna do that across the whole site because you wanna make sure it's consistent not just on one page, but on all of them. Less is more. I think we all know that little dab will do with the glue when you're in elementary school. You don't need too much. Too much actually takes away from the point that you're trying to do. So think about, is the information needed on the page, or could it be a pop-up, or could it be a secondary page that shows up, or on another tab? Think about who's using this. The person who's using this is not of the same skill set most likely that you are. So you want to get in their mindset about how they're thinking, what is going on in their day, how are they navigating the site, what are they coming from, what are they going to make sure that you can really make it right for them. And don't go for wow. As we saw at the very beginning, design is best when it's invisible. So you don't need to have that spinning, crazy, fun stuff. You want to make it functional. You want to make sure that it's usable, clean, and gets the point across and everything like that. And design is never done. That's the other part. You want to make sure that you continue to evolve and adapt as design principles change. And so this is another great quote is, it's so simple, but that's why it's so hard. So the best design is very hard to do, but it really looks that simple. And if you want, there's some continued reading if you want to take a picture of this, or Nicole, I'm happy to give you these slides if you want to send them out after that. So that is my presentation. Any questions from the audience? Yes?
I saw your page up there. It looks beautiful. So this is the one big EX dashboard page.
Yep.
How do you handle, what's your best practice for like mobile? We've got a lot of mobile devices like that scale down.
Great question. So that one, I do have a responsive version of it that can get it down, but for that one, really, I'm working on my breakpoints. I don't have a great answer for you yet, which we're going to keep working on making them better in the future, but you can start using the flow pane to get them to start lining up. The organization I found, if I go back to mine, if I really wanted to use the flow pane right, I would need to not have this fourth column over to the side. That's the one that really messes it up whenever I do there, so I would probably reorganize what I was looking at. Great question. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much.